Chapter 4, The First Battle. A howl rose from the meadow. It did not sound like a wolf. It was too sharp, too ragged, and too close. The sound tore across the grasslands like something had opened its mouth in the darkness and announced that it had found them. The horse panicked at once, stomping and tossing its head hard enough to make the carriage creak. Ennell gasped and grabbed Malvern's arm, while Agivar's grip tightened around his bow. Even Beorne, who had been angry moments ago, turned toward the dark hills with a serious look. The warmth of polite conversation vanished in an instant. The road, the grass, and the fading sky all seemed to grow colder. The party listened as the last echo of the howl faded into the meadow, and the silence that followed felt worse than the sound itself. Malvern's face went pale. "Get on!" he said, his voice suddenly sharp with urgency. "All of you, get on now. If that thing is near, then we are safer moving together than standing here arguing." Ennell nodded quickly, her earlier caution replaced by fear. "Please hurry. We can ask who you are when we are behind the village gate." "That is the smartest plan I have heard all day," Marishka said, climbing onto the carriage with Agivar's help. Agivar followed after her, still carrying the rabbits as if abandoning them would somehow dishonour the hunt. Lorien climbed aboard with careful dignity, though the carriage rocked under the sudden movement and ruined the effect. Beorne came last, and the moment he placed one foot on the carriage, the wood gave a loud groan that made both farmers look back in alarm. Beorne paused with one hand raised. "Do not worry, I am sure it always makes that sound." "It absolutely does not," Malvern said, snapping the reins before anyone could think too deeply about it. The horse lurched forward and the carriage began to move. Malvern snapped the reins again, harder this time, and the horse broke into a run. Night had fully taken the road now, swallowing the meadows on either side until the world beyond the wheels became a blur of black grass and colder wind. The lantern hanging from the carriage gave only a small circle of light, far too weak to reveal the twists of the road ahead, and soon Malvern and Ennell were nearly driving blind. "It is too dark, Malvern. I cannot see the road ahead," Ennell said, holding tightly to the side of the carriage as it rattled over stones and uneven dirt. "I know, Ennell, but we need to keep moving," Malvern answered, his eyes fixed forward even though the darkness gave him little to work with. "We are still far from the village, and I do not want to be caught on this road after what we just heard." The four exchanged glances. A village nearby was the first good news they had received all evening, especially after failing to make fire, nearly being run over, and possibly being hunted by something that sounded deeply unfriendly. Lorien leaned forward, hope brightening his face despite the chaos. "Did you say there is a village near here?" Malvern nodded without looking away from the road. "Ashbarrow. It is not too far if the horse keeps running and the road does not betray us." "Good," Lorien said, his confidence returning a little too quickly. "We can guide you. I can see far enough where the road leads." Malvern glanced back at him in confusion. "How can you guide me? There is no light." Lorien smiled with the pride of someone who had been waiting his whole life to say something impressive. "With my elven eyes, of course!" Marishka looked at him with immediate frustration. "Please do not say it like you are selling a special feature." Despite her complaint, Lorien moved closer to the front and began guiding Malvern. He pointed out bends in the road, dark stones half buried in the dirt, and places where the path dipped before the horse reached them. Malvern followed his instructions, still confused but too desperate to question useful miracles. The carriage ran faster through the night, wheels rattling, wood groaning, and wind tugging at cloaks and hair. Then the strange howl returned. This time it was closer. The sound rolled behind them and crawled along the road, making the horse's ears flatten. Ennell looked back, but the darkness behind the carriage showed nothing. Marishka's expression sharpened and she leaned closer to Agivar. "Do you remember how elven eyes work in the dark? Walk me through it again, please," Agivar said honestly, shifting the rabbits aside so he could ready his bow. Marishka nodded, her voice calmer now that danger had given her something useful to focus on. "Elven eyes cannot see that far in complete darkness, but with enough light we can see almost 50 feet. With moonlight we can see farther than that." Agivar looked up and frowned. "It is a cloudy night. I do not see any moonlight shining right now." The carriage rattled through the dark road, its wooden wheels grinding over stone, mud, and hidden roots beneath the tall grass. The lantern hanging from the front swayed with every violent bump, throwing weak circles of orange light across the path before the darkness swallowed them whole. Beyond that trembling glow, the world was nothing but black shapes, whispering fields, and the heavy silence of a night that felt far too awake. Marishka lowered his gaze, trying to drag old rules from memory as if they were pieces of a forgotten spell. The game had made everything sound simple. A drow had dark vision. A drow could see through darkness. A drow was supposed to belong to the night, but this world had already proven that nothing worked exactly as they remembered, and guessing wrong here felt more dangerous than losing a turn at the table. "Okay," Marishka said, his voice quieter than usual as the carriage rocked beneath them. "You are a drow, and drow elves are supposed to have dark vision. I do not know how it works in this world, but if any of us can see past the lantern light right now, it should be you." Agivar looked toward the road ahead, but the lantern only showed a short stretch of dirt before everything vanished into a wall of shadow. The darkness beyond it felt thick, almost alive, as if something was standing just outside the light and waiting for him to fail. His fingers tightened around the edge of the carriage, and for once he did not make a joke. Marishka leaned closer, watching the sky through the gaps between the swaying trees and tall grass. "Do not stare at the light," he continued. "The lantern will only blind you. Look past it, find the darkest place you can see, and focus there. Let your eyes adjust. Let the night come to you instead of chasing it." Agivar swallowed and slowly lifted his gaze beyond the lantern's glow. At first there was nothing, only black fields, black trees, and the faint outline of the road disappearing under the wheels. The carriage lurched, and somewhere in the distance, the wind carried a low sound through the grass, too faint to tell it was an animal, a branch, or something following them. "The sky is not completely covered," Marishka said, pointing upward. "Look there. The clouds are moving. The moon is about to show itself. When that happens, there will be a moment when the darkness changes. You may be able to see beyond the lamplight, but you have to be ready. Do not blink. Do not look away. Focus your sight." Agivar followed Marishka's finger and saw it then. High above them, the clouds were slowly drifting apart, their dark edges glowing silver as something bright pressed from behind them. The moon was hidden, but not gone. It was waiting behind the clouds like an eye about to open. The carriage continued forward, the lantern creaking, the horses breathing hard, and the road vanishing beneath them, one trembling piece at a time. Agivar stared into the darkness ahead, forcing himself not to look at the light. His heart beat louder in his ears. The shadow beyond the road seemed endless, but as the clouds thinned and the first pale line of moonlight spilled across the meadow, something inside his vision shifted. The blackness was no longer empty. Shapes began to separate from the dark. Grass became grass again. Stones broke away from the road. The far edges of bushes formed faint grey outlines beneath the moon. Agivar's breath caught as the world beyond the lantern slowly revealed itself, not in colour, not in warmth, but in cold silver detail. Marishka saw the change in his face and went still. "Agivar," he said carefully, "what do you see?" Agivar did not answer at once. His eyes remained locked on the road ahead, wide and unblinking, as the moon finally tore free from the clouds above them. Agivar gave her a quick thumbs up. He understood her meaning. If something was chasing them, and if the moonlight revealed it at the right moment, he might have a chance to shoot before it reached the carriage. "I can see shades of grey beyond the darkness now," Agivar said, keeping his eyes fixed ahead. "It is not fully detailed, but it is enough to distinguish shapes." Marishka's tense expression eased a little. "Well, that is an improvement, and it is a big help, bro," he said, giving Agivar an encouraging nod. "Keep watch. We are counting on you." Meanwhile, Lorien continued guiding Malvern from the front, his eyes fixed on the road as the carriage flew through the dark. Far ahead, faint points of light appeared through the blackness. They were small at first, barely more than fireflies trapped along the horizon, but to Lorien's eyes, they were unmistakable. "Guys, we're getting close to the village," he called. Malvern squinted ahead, but for a while he could not see what Lorien saw. Then, after several tense moments, the village lights finally appeared to his human eyes. Relief flickered across his face. "You are right. We are getting close." "Told you," Lorien said, unable to resist. Elven eyes. "Bro, stop bragging before the universe decides to correct your attitude," Marishka said. The universe answered with another howl. It was louder this time, sharper and closer, enough to make everyone turn. Beorne reached for his axe, but he was still not used to the straps that held it in place. He tugged once, then again, and the weapon stubbornly refused to come free. "Why is my own axe fighting me?" Beorne growled. Marishka leaned over and helped loosen the strap with an annoyed click of her tongue. "Because apparently even your equipment has survival instincts." Agivar readied his bow, his eyes searching the dark slopes beside the road. Marishka, meanwhile, looked down at her empty hands and felt the unpleasant reality settle in. She had no weapon, no dagger, no bow, no staff, and no idea how her current body was supposed to fight. Beorne noticed and, despite the danger, could not resist the opening. "Yo, it really sucks to be you right now," Beorne said, glancing at her with a teasing grin. "You are a chick, and you do not even have a weapon." Marishka shot him a glare sharp enough to count as ranged damage. "Oh, shut up, muscle brain. Besides, I still do not know what I really am." "You are a rogue class, right?" Agivar asked, keeping his bow aimed toward the hills. "That was intended to be," Marishka said. "Remember, I barely used her because I was busy being the DM." Beorne opened his mouth, clearly about to say something snarky, but Agivar suddenly pointed to the right side of the road. "There, I saw something move up the hill." Marishka and Lorien followed his direction at once. At first the hillside was too dark to see anything clearly. Then the clouds above shifted and a narrow break opened just long enough for pale moonlight to spill across the grass. The three elves saw it. A slender beast stood on the slope, low to the ground and moving on all fours. Its dark skin blended into the night so well that it seemed almost made from shadow. It had a snout, but not like a wolf's. It was shorter, uglier, and shaped more like a hyena, though with less fur and more exposed flesh. Its body looked thin but powerful, built for chasing, stalking, and tearing down prey in the dark. It did not charge. It simply watched the carriage with cold patience, as if it already knew the road would end. Then it lifted its head and howled. The clouds closed over the moon again, and the creature vanished as if the night had swallowed it whole. "The village is close," Malvern said, forcing himself to stay steady. "Hang in there." "Faster, Malvern, faster," Ennell urged, her voice tight with fear. Malvern snapped the reins twice, and the horse ran harder. The carriage shook violently as it raced down the road, wheels bouncing over stones and roots. The village lights grew brighter ahead, and soon the wooden gate came into view, but to their horror it was closed.